Welcome to Cheap Controls. We make videos on things that we struggled with, hoping to help you so you don't. Consider subscribing and hitting that bell.
In this video, I'm going to go over how to tie Python to Nextion. There won't be an Arduino in this. I'm just going to use Visual Studio Code in a PC, and I'm just going to code on the Visual Studio and write in Python and then send the commands over to the Nextion. I'm fairly new to Python. If you've watched my testing or building a tester video series, you'll see that I'm a little shaky on it. So I just thought I'll take some time and go through the steps that I went through to figure out how to get the command structure to send over to the Nextion. I'm going to send a number and a text. I'm going to use small enhanced version display, and then this is the editor version I'm using. I have a fairly simple display set up here. I have an HO or a slider over here, and I have it set up to the default. It's going to send a value of 0 to 100. In this case, I'm not going to send a value. I just have it set so you can receive a value. And then this way we can test sending a value from Python to the display, and I'll have it adjust the position of the slider. I have a text box so I can send some text. I have a radio button so I can send some colors. And then I also have this button here where I can send something from the Nextion up to the Python code. And in this case, I have it print send HO value. So I'm sending the HO value, but I'm not actually sending the HO value. I'm just sending some text. And then you can see I have it uploaded to the display over here. So we'll use a real display, and I'll pull this up when we're sending the code. And then for the Python, I'm going to start with a blank screen. We're going to use two imports on this, or two libraries. We're going to use the PyVisa library, and then we're going to use time. The only reason I'm using time is I'm going to put a little delay in there. And when I import the PyVisa, I rename it and I call it Visa. So I'm importing PyVisa, but you'll see I refer to it as Visa. And then I'm going to call the ports that are connected to the laptop. I'm going to call them ports. So the first thing you do is you get, in this line here, ports equal visa.resource manager. You're collecting the ports that are currently available on the device. And then I'm going to print the ports that are available. And right now I should only have one set up because I just have the Nextion plugged in. And you can see I have this ASRL3, 2 colons, and INSTR. I'm not sure the naming function is. It's probably what's in the computer. I'm used to seeing COM3, but this is the way it is. So when you use it, you have to use this string. If you plug in multiple things, you'll have to figure out which one you're using. You can go to the Arduino IDE, or you could go to the Nextion IDE, and when you write up to it, well, actually, I'll show you that right now. So I'm going to upload the code that I just wrote again. And you can see it says connected COM3, and it's sending the data. So the COM3 will relate back to that ASRL. And after we find our port, we'll have to open one. And I'm going to open the one that we just found, the ASRL3 INSTR. I'm going to call it serial port. And there's a lot of settings in here for this, but all I'm going to set for this is the baud rate. But I'll come back to this here a little bit later. But right now I've got the Nextion set at 9600, so I'm going to set this port at 9600. If I want to infinitely loop in Python, I just have a while 1. So 1 is always going to be true, and so this is just going to run forever, whatever we put in the loop. And what I'll do when we start the loop is I'm going to look at the serial port buffer, and if there's bytes in the buffer, I'm going to print them. So we'll pull anything that's in the buffer and we'll print it. And right now we have it set up that whenever we press that one slider button, we should get that send HO values. And you can see down here we've got the same code, and we're in that while loop now. So now when I press the slider button, we should get the value. And you can see we got it. It looks a little funny, but we got it. I'm going to push it again. We'll put a little delay in here, and that's why I was saying that'll slow it down a little bit. The data will collect in the buffer, and then it'll print. And in Python, whenever you use this time.sleep, which is like the delay, it's in seconds. So it's going to delay 2 seconds. So I'm going to run this again. And there you go. Now we see send HO value. And it's coming through in binary, and that's what this B is. So you'd have to do some conversion. I'm not going to get into that right now. Well, I will a little bit because when I write to it, but I'm not going to go into the conversion of it. If you have questions on that, let me know, and it'd make for another video series to go over strings in Python. I'm going to insert my commands before this sleep so they happen right away, and then it'll sleep, and then it'll happen again. And I'm going to print this word top, so that way we know we're at the top of the code every time after we do this sleep command. So we can see it in the console down there. And so I'm going to go through my journey on how I did this. So the first time I opened this up and sent something, I thought, well, let's just serial write a command just like we do in the Arduino. We're going to send ho.val. I didn't want to put the quotes in the first time, so we're going to adjust this slider over here. And we're going to set the slider equal to 23, and then we're going to follow it up with these FFs. And you can see right away we get an error in here. And it says the ASCII codec couldn't encode the characters in position 9 to 11. So it doesn't know how to take this FF, and that's because it's extended ASCII character. And so I did some research, and I found out the answer to this. And this is where that binary comes in. When you're writing ASCII characters that are above in the extended range, you have to use this binary, and you have to write it as raw. So what I do now is I write this value up here, this ho.val equal 23, and then I follow it, which that's actually good for me because I break up that end characters anyway. So then I could set up a variable and add that in similar to the library that I do in Arduino, or not the library, but the way it's configured in Arduino. So then I run it like this, and I was pretty hopeful that it would work at this point. I'm sending the top. I'm not getting any errors, which is good, but I'm also not adjusting this display here. So my next thought was go ahead and write raw this value too. Now I was worried that this wouldn't work, that I would have to convert ho.val equal 23 into Xcodes. And I'd have to find the ASCII for H, the ASCII for 0. But I thought, well, let's just go ahead and give it a shot. And look, and it worked. So now every 2 seconds, if I adjust this up, it knocks it back down. So then I decided I wanted to figure out why the one would work and the one wouldn't. And so what I have is I have a program called hterm, and what I'll do is I'm going to send this output out to serial port 3, but I'm going to send it back into the laptop. I'm going to use 2 of these RS-232 to USB converters, and I'm just going to tie them together. And I'll send it out one and read it in the other. And so I'll use hterm on one of the RS-232 ports, or COM ports, and I'll use the Python on the other one. I'm going to set this up and I'll show it to you. So the first thing I have to do is I unplugged the Nextion and I plugged in one of them. So I know that this one is 3. And now I'm going to plug in the other one. I think I'm going to slow this down a little bit too. I'm going to change this sleep to 30. And so this way we're going to send a command, but it'll be 30 seconds and it won't fill up the hterm. So I'll restart it again. And this time I get 19. So on the hterm I'll be using 19. And on this one, I'll be using 3 for the Python. So I'm just going to leave the Python code. But you could switch that if you wanted to play around a little bit. You could switch the Python to 19 and the hterm to 3. And this is the hterm program. I use this a lot when I'm doing some RS-232 and I'm getting weird things because you can see the data coming in ASCII. You can see it in hex, decimal, and binary. And I'm going to bring it in all those different ways just to show you how it goes. And up here, I always hit refresh first, and then I go over here and I can select the port that I want. I also have to go over here and change the baud rate because I'm running 9600. And then when I hit connect, it'll take the next time, it will take the command in from the Visual Studio Code debug. And you can see we've got an array of code here. I'm actually going to disconnect this now so we don't get another one. And we can see the ASCII HO.value equal 23 and then our FFs. And you can see it in the ASCII, you can see it in hex, you can see it in decimal, and then you can even see it in binary. And this is helpful with our FFs because when you're doing it on the Arduino, those last three characters come through as garbage sometimes. In this case, the ASCII version is little squares, but the code is FF. And then in decimal, it's 255, and then in binary, it's all ones. So if you are sending some binary data, this is a good way to pick this up. And I'll put a link to this in the description. I'm going to go back to the Python, and I'm going to change it back to the right. I'm going to comment this line out, and I'm going to add this line back in. So now we're going to send it the way that I was pretty confident that this would work, and I want to find out why it won't. So I'm going to restart this. I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to clear it out and connect. Okay, so now we have our data, and we've got the HO.value, just like we would expect, equal to 23. But here's where our problem is. We insert a D and an A. And this is it in binary, and you can see the characters are kind of garbage because it's a character return and a line feed. I can't remember off the top of my head which one's which. So when we do the write, though, it inserts those at the end of the string. And that explains why it doesn't work, because we're getting garbage or the Nextion just ignores it. So this is where this top part up here comes into play. And what we did is we commented everything out. And when you have this write termination and read termination, and I assume the read termination is what it's looking for to terminate the read, and the write is what it writes when it sends a command. And since we don't have anything defined, it sends a carriage return and a line feed. So in our case, we're going to uncomment this. And I just have one. I just have a /R in here. I can't remember if that's a carriage return or a line feed. But that's one of them. So now we should only get one hex code out, whereas before we were getting two. If I go back to this, you can see that we got a D and an A. We should just get one of those now. It still wouldn't work if I sent it to the Nextion, but I'm just doing this to show you how it works. And you can see we've got the HO.val equal 23, and then we just have the 0D and then the FFs. So the /R equates to a 0D in hex. I'm going to try something different. I'm just going to stick in a character and see what happens. So I'm going to stick an X33. That would be a hex for a 3, because that would be the hex code. 33 equates to a 3 in ASCII. And we'll send this, and we'll just see if we get a 3. And we did. So we're able to send a 3 to terminate our characters. So I wonder if we couldn't set that up to send the FFs, then we wouldn't have to worry about sending the FFs. I didn't do this when I was working it out. It just kind of occurred to me. So I'm going to do this. FF. I'm going to leave it lowercase. Then I'm going to go down here. I'm going to comment this line out. And so all we're going to send is this F0 val equal 23. If you see, it says the encoding can't happen. So let's change this to write raw. Let's just go down to this. So we'll send this binary version that we're sending. And ho.val equal 23. Oh, but there's nothing at the end of it. And I'm betting that the raw didn't add that at the end. So it doesn't look like it's going to work. But that's okay, because we do have an answer to our question. When you make a change up here, it adds it to the write version down here when we just do the write. But when we do write raw, it ignores all that and it just sends the text. So we're going to have to go back to this if we want it to work. So I'm going to set back up the Nextion and we're going to send some text. So now, just to make sure we didn't break anything, if I run this I guess it's every 30 seconds now. Let's change this to 10. So every 10 seconds, we're going to update this screen. Now let's go back to 2. 2 is enough time for me to be able to touch it and give us a little quicker feedback. And you can see it seems to be working okay now. So now I've added a line that's t0.text, and then we'll escape sequence out the quotes, so we can add quotes, because when you send an RS-232 or a serial command to the Nextion, and it's text, you have to include the quotes within the quotes. And you can see I do that there. And then we're going to follow it up with that XFF. So let's restart this and see if we change this text right here to hello. And you can see that we did. But this is also running really fast now for some reason. Oh, because I knocked this time out of the loop. This is where you have to be very careful with your tabs, because this time was back here and the while is here, so it considered it out of the loop. So when I did my cut and paste, I knocked it out. So if I restart this, you'll see that it'll slow down. Oh, I didn't do it. So now when I restart this, you'll see that it'll slow down. And you can see now how it's top, and it's every 2 seconds. Oh, and it's not liking the command now. Can you see that I got a reply of an invalid variable? And that's probably because I stopped it. Here, let me stop this so it doesn't go away. What happened was I probably stopped the command or restarted it in the middle of sending a string. So it got some data from one portion, but didn't complete it. So then it didn't recognize that first command, and it spit back an error. At this point, we've changed the HO, or the slider, and the text in the hello. Let's change a color in the radio button. So for the radio button, you have a background color and a foreground color. We're going to change the center dot PCO to 32,540. I actually don't know what color that is, so we'll just see what happens. Hopefully it's not green, but green is like 2016, so I think we'll be okay. And there you can see that it changed to like a bluish color. Let's move this up. And now let's toggle some text. So we're going to start up here setting it equal to 23. We're going to set the text to hello, and we're going to set the color to 32,540. Below this time.sleep2, we're going to change it to 73. We're going to say bye, and we're going to set this color to 2,345. So that way we should be able to tell the difference in the circle. Oh, and you can see I got this error again, but we know what this is. So we got the ASCII codec can't encode characters position, so we must have a write in there somewhere. So we have to change this up here to write raw, and we have to put this B in front of it, and now it should be fine. And you can see that it's changing. But feel free to comment in this and let me know where you might want this to go. This is kind of an interesting series for me. I'm not sure where this can go because I'm mainly focused on the ESP32, But I'm always open to stuff like this because I just think it's interesting. And if it involves the Nextion, it makes for some pretty decent videos. And they make nice reference videos that I can refer people to.
Well, that's about it for this video. If you like what you saw, consider giving me a thumbs up. And also consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching.